Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and on today's episode, I have the wonderful Nnedi Okorafor talking to me about her new book, Death of the Author. And my guest gay reader today is the fab UK drag queen Holly Stars, who's talking to me about her new book, Murder in the Dressing Room. Nnedi and I talk about being open to reading as many genres and styles of books as possible. And so I thought it was really fun to pair these two together on this episode. Both of their bios can be found in the show notes. Also in the show notes, links to all the things. You can watch this conversation over on YouTube. Holly is in full drag, and that is a fun enough reason alone to watch over there. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and like and subscribe to Gaze Reading wherever you get your podcasts. That way you will be the first to know when a new episode drops. And I have been known to release a random episode. Like, I just released an episode where I was in conversation with Logan Lochner, who is someone who needed to evacuate during the Los Angeles fires. And he talks to me about the books that he chose to bring with him. You can find that over on gazereading.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have been listening, then you know that I'm partnering with Aardvark Book Club. If you've not been listening, well, I am partnering with Aardvark Book Club. And so if you use the code Gaze Reading at checkout, you get your first book for only $4 plus free shipping. Here's the thing. Today's episode, Nnedi Okorafor, Death of the Author. If you go and look at the Aardvark Book Club Instagram, they have a hint for one of their February books. If you look at it, and then look at the cover art for Death of the Author, and then look at the hint, and then look at the cover art for Death of the Author, I think you might know where you want to use your code. You can get your copy of the book for only $4. Hint, hint, hint. So partnering with Aardvark Book Club, you can go to their website, aardvarkbookclub.com, use the code Gaze Reading at checkout. Again, you get the book for $4 plus free shipping. Such a good deal. And you do not want to miss out on this book. And Aardvark is terrific, and they're so much fun to follow on social media as well. You could also follow Gaze Reading on Instagram at Gaze Reading. And those are all of the things. Please enjoy my conversation with Nnedi Okorafor and then Holly Stars. Nnedi, I'm so excited to have you on Gaze Reading. It's such a special book, Nnedi. That's all I got to say.
Oh, you've got to the end. Oh gosh.
Yeah, girl. I read to the end. Come on.
Every time I talk to anyone who's read the whole thing, I just feel I get this my cheeks. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
We're not even 2 minutes into the conversation.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, this is a hard one. This book is a lot.
Of course. All right, let's save the a lot for the end so we don't it'll be okay. Okay, let's start with the softball.
Okay, good. Yeah.
You are a pull-up champion per your Instagram.
Oh, you've seen that. I could have done more that day. I could have done more. I got into my head. I got to the point where I'm like, in my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing a lot right now. I could have done 3 more. I'm still mad at myself for that. But yeah, I've always been able to do pull-ups since I was in 3rd grade.
And in this very moment is when I realized, so not only did I read to the end of the book, I read the acknowledgments. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And you say that your daughter says, don't worry, people won't think you're Zelu. And hey, upper body strength. Maybe you are the same. I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was very impressed. Color me impressed. I was so impressed.
Thank you.
I could not do that many pull-ups. And I also heard on someone else's podcast that you are a candy person.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me more. What is your fave?
Okay. Chocolate, of course. Chocolate it does the things in the Matrix when she eats that I think it was steak or something. She eats something, and you see all the things happening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's me with chocolate. That's
Now,
definitely
when you say chocolate, are you like, does it matter what it is? Can it be Hershey? Are you like, I want the 83% dark chocolate from the artisanal chocolate place?
no. I'll eat Hershey. I will eat what it's just chocolate in general. And I just love it's just not the cheap chocolate, like the super cheap where it's this is
Where it
most
tastes like a
point.
little, it's a little waxy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, like, love Lindor and just regular chocolate. It's just
Ooh, Lindor.
Lindor is just
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
And if you have one of those truffles and you let
Oh,
it
the
and you
truffles.
let it sit in your mouth
Mhm,
long
mhm,
enough
mhm,
and
mhm.
it like explodes and then melts
Yes.
in.
Yes.
But
That.
you have to have good patience.
That. Yeah, I'll leave it out for a little bit so it's warm, and then I'll eat it in this and I have to sit and don't talk to me when I've eaten one. Do not talk to me. Let me just sit and let it happen. Yeah. So chocolate is that is my
Yes.
weakness. That is
Okay.
my
When I think candy, I think of like Skittles, which I'm very not. That is not me. So
I'll eat Skittles.
Nettie, what is one of the first things I said to you? This is a safe space. I do not judge that. That is okay.
Red Skittles. Red Skittles are just yum. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed.
Yeah. Sweets. I do like sweets, but
Okay.
chocolate is my
Yeah.
main thing. But I'll eat Nerds. I'll eat Skittles. I'll eat
Nerds. I don't think I've talked about nerds in 10 years.
yeah, Nerds and Dweebs too. They have something called Dweebs. I was
What is a
addicted
dweeb?
they're like soft nerds, and I feel like there's something addictive in them because at first I was just like, "Oh, these are just delicious. They're so bad for you." Oh, yeah, dweebs are good.
If you think about that in the context of a middle school,
Yeah, yeah.
oh,
I was
that's
like,
a soft nerd. That's a dweeb.
I yeah, yeah. I wonder if that was,
Yeah, no,
you
that's
know,
really funny.
yeah.
Okay, this is all very interesting. And I feel like I learned so much about you reading Death of the Author.
Yeah.
But now I feel like we've taken it to a whole new level.
All the additional information. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Death of the Author. Congratulations. It
Thank you.
just came out.
Yes. Well, it hasn't come out yet. It comes
No,
out
it,
in
it
oh,
just
yeah,
came
it
out.
just came out. Yes. Just came out. I'm ecstatic. I'm super excited. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so tell us, what is your elevator pitch for the book?
Oh, God. Are you
And now,
doing this to me? Oh, God.
I think it could be as simple as this, which you probably can't even read,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I think it could be that
And
simple.
storytelling. Yeah, the future of storytelling. Yeah. I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to do it. This is gonna be bad because I'm not used to doing it yet. It's gonna
Yeah,
be bad. But
yeah,
okay, it's a hard one. But like Death of the Author is one, it's my most personal novel
yeah.
to date. It is easily the most personal. So there's that. But it's part Nigerian American family saga. Our main character is Zelu, she's a failed professor who becomes a writer. So there's that. And then it's also a book about post-human robots. Yes, so that's
Yeah,
my elevator pitch.
obsessed. That's all you need. And honestly, I have to say, I didn't know anything else going in. That's all I knew was the future of
Excellent.
storytelling is here because I don't like reading too much about a book because the blurbs these days give away so
Yes,
much.
they do. They do. And also the blurbs can point you in a certain direction. And you can't like not once you hear that thing, you're already down that road.
Right.
Whereas if you just go and that's how I love reading as well, just going in and just seeing where letting the story take me where it's going to take me
Hmm.
and not letting others guide. I don't like being guided. So it's yeah, I don't read blurbs. When I pick up a book, I read the first few lines. I skip all the stuff and
Yeah.
read the first few lines.
Sometimes I'll read like the one sentence on the back, like before you get into the blurb, a
Yeah.
big picture idea, so that
Oh,
I have
yeah,
a sense of what's the style, what's the
yeah,
genre. But yeah, that's it. But
yeah.
you're right. The first page, am I going to get into this? And
Mhm.
that's all you need.
And you'll know.
So for me, part of it too was the title, Death of the Author.
Mhm.
And you talking about a blurb pointing you in a direction. I feel like the title points you in a direction.
It's because a lot of people don't know the weight of that title. They don't know where it's
Uh-huh.
from. And so I've had a lot of people who get scared of the title. They're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because they're not. So yeah, it can point you, but it can also it's an alarming title. Even when I see it, when I see it in like an email subject about my book, every time I see it, I'm alarmed. I'm like, "Ugh," I feel it's unsettling. And so I like that. That
Yeah.
part of it, it's good. That goes with the book. Yeah.
Okay, so Death of the Author, the title, points you in a direction, and you were on a journey this whole time, but it is from a quote.
Yes.
Can you share?
Yeah, there's an essay by a French scholar named Roland Barthes. It's called The Death of the Author. And it is all about, God, how do I put it? That the author has to die in order for the reader to live, really. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's about separating the author from what the author has produced.
Mhm.
And this is an essay for anyone who has been a lit major or taken lit courses at the collegiate level. This is a familiar essay. It's shoved down our throats. I have 2 masters and a PhD. So a lot of schooling, and that essay was shoved down my throat for so many years. And I hated that essay because I strongly don't believe you can separate the author from the author's work. I feel like they're inextricably linked. So this is something that essay has triggers me whenever I hear the title. I'm just like, whoa.
Well, it's interesting though, because you don't have the piece of art without the artist, but is it a piece of art if you don't have an audience?
I believe it is. I believe it is. And a lot of it has to do with like the way that I started writing. There's a whole thing. And I wrote a short memoir called Broken Places and Outer Spaces that goes into how I started writing because I cannot talk about all of it. But
So everyone go read that and then you'll learn.
Yeah, go read that. It's just too much to explain. But the way that I started writing definitely makes it's very, from the beginning, writing has been a very personal thing.
Mhm.
And I didn't need an audience. Creating these stories, the audience was very secondary. It was like something that was coming out of me that I needed to pull out. And it
Mhm.
wasn't about whether other people consumed it or not. So I think because of the way that I started writing, the idea of who am I writing for is not a question. It's not
Mm.
that's that much of a concern with when it comes to what I'm producing and why I'm doing it.
That's really interesting because it goes to like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a
Yeah.
sound? And the answer is it does, but
Yes.
no one hears it. So the art does exist. It's just no one's necessarily seeing it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Sometimes the art itself, the existence of the art is the important thing. It's all good. Audience, no audience, creating something amazing and no one knowing that it exists. There's a spiritual something about that. There's a
Yeah.
spiritual output about that as well. So all of it is art to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and the book is about storytelling. It's essentially
It
a
is.
love letter to storytelling,
It is.
to generational storytelling. Lots of passing stories
Mhm.
down, up, around, through. My favorite quote from the book, and this is not a spoiler, but is "Tell me your truth, and I'll make it a story."
I love that line.
What does that mean to you? / what does that mean a story is as at its core to you?
Gosh, it's hard to talk without giving things away in this.
No, this could
But
be unrelated to this book. What is what does a story mean to you?
oh man, it's existence.
Yeah.
And whether it's read or not, whether it's consumed or not, whether it's I don't know. There's something about taking something and making it a story. And it can be. There are many ways of telling a story. It's not just the written word. It's not just the spoken word. It can be the pantomimed word, the danced word, the sung word. There's so many ways of telling, but like taking something and putting it into a story makes it, I hate to say immortal because I'm always fighting with that idea of what immortality is and
Yeah.
whether it's how important it is or not. Like that's another topic, but like it does give it a sort of immortality, a sort of it and also brings it to fruition. It makes it clear. It makes it understood. And this is whether it is consumed or not.
Mm-hmm.
What taking something and making it into a story does for me.
What makes a good story to you?
There's like it when you see it.
Mm.
Because anything that I'd say, I can find an example that's counter that. You know it when you see it. A good story is the story that does the thing. That does the thing. That's a good story. And that thing has many forms and has many shapes.
And it's probably different for many people.
It's different for many people,
Yeah.
and it's different for different times as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing though. There's the consistency. The one thing about it is that it's a thing, but it changes in every other single way. That's what makes a good story.
Yeah. You're right.
So,
another great quote about stories in the book is that stories contain our existence. They are like gods. When did you first fall in love with stories? You say you wrote this book that talks about your journey to writing, but what about a story in general?
I think I fell in love with stories when it was around when I learned to read, but it was like it happened at different times, because stories to me weren't just from reading them. It was from them being told as well. Like I had I think a lot of my mom liked to write and my dad liked to tell stories. I think that combination is really where a lot of this comes from. But I loved listening to stories, especially from older folks when they start just talking.
Yeah.
I probably fell in love with stories where a lot of things happened for me, which was in Nigeria. Because in Nigeria, we would visit and we would go to the village, and that's when everyone would come home. It's usually around Christmas or Easter, everyone would come home. So everyone would be together. And so you have all the generations all together. And I just developed this habit whenever we would go, because my parents were taking my siblings and me back to Nigeria from like very young age. And I don't know, I was just attracted to when the elders especially were speaking, when they didn't know anyone else was listening. And you just hide behind a chair and listen. And whatever they were saying, they were always telling stories about the past and about this and about that, talking about people. And there was something intoxicating about that.
Were they different from when they did think people were listening?
Yes, there was always the more taboo stuff. And those things, and always things that I always had questions about, because I was very observant. And I'm like, why is Auntie over here? Why is she that way? And nobody would ever answer that question because there was something taboo about it. But you'd hear those answers when they were talking, when they thought no one was listening. And I think that was really where I started falling in love with this idea of stories and the secrecy behind them and the power of them, because they always felt so powerful. And also the fact that they were intoxicating. Yeah. It was just better. It was like candy.
That was really where your candy addiction started.
Yes, really. It's all connected. It's all connected.
So in the book, there are what's the best way to describe this? The robots have identities, and one is a scholar, and they go on to say that they ask questions in order to hear other people's stories. And some of the questions are, what were you like when you were young? What were your dreams? Nnedi, I'm curious, what were you like when you were young? What were your dreams?
When I was little, I was very imaginative. I started writing when I was 20. And before that, it didn't cross my mind. Parents are both doctors, Nigerians. We don't, it's always about doctor, engineer, lawyer. You don't go into the arts. That is unheard of. So it's like, I was never pushed in that direction, but I was naturally very imaginative. Like one of my earliest memories was we lived in Indianapolis for a while, and it was cold. And I had a pail, like one of those pails that you put sand in, and all this detritus from like leaves and twigs and stuff had fallen into it, and it had rained, and so there was water in it, and then it froze. And I went outside and I saw that it was frozen. I was like, oh, what happened here? And I dumped it over, and it was just this chunk of just stuff. And I kid you not, when I looked at that chunk of detritus and whatever, and dirt and just leaves, I saw universes in there. I saw twirling universes and stars in this thing. That's how my mind worked. Yeah. From a young age, that's how my mind always worked. So I was very imaginative. I was always talking about, I convinced my whole kindergarten class that the bushes outside, which were red, were infested with demons. So it was like that. I was that kind of kid.
Wow. Oh my God.
I don't know what kind of dreams did I have? Flying dreams, imaginative.
No,
just,
but
well,
dreams of the future. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to do something with animals and especially bugs. I loved bugs. I loved bugs.
What kind of bugs?
Grasshoppers,
My husband
snake
hates
mantises.
bugs. So I'm very
I can understand why someone would hate bugs. I totally understand. Like when people are like, "Oh, I can't stand them." I'm like, I get it. I totally get it.
You are
But
so much bigger than a bug.
yeah, yes, that's part of it though. They're small. They were little and they were in the grass and
Mhm.
there were worlds happening in the grass. And there were like there could be empires that rise and fall in a small patch of grass and you had to be paying attention.
Yeah.
So I loved bugs for that reason. They're always doing something, whether you liked it or not. I was
Huh.
just fascinated by them. So yeah, I wanted to study them. I wanted to categorize them. I wanted to chase them around and look at them. And yeah, that's what I
Oh,
wanted.
how fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I start to think too much about bugs, I'll have an existential crisis because it's like, as humans, don't we have to be someone else's bug?
Yeah. Yeah. But bugs are great.
Yes.
They're colorful and smart and numerous, and they do kill. Humans could easily be bugs. We could view them. You can view the Earth as definitely infested,
Yeah.
destructive bugs.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
you think about it and you're like, oh God, we're somebody else's bug.
Yeah.
It's funny you say you wanted to work with animals. I briefly wanted to be a dolphin trainer when I was a kid.
I could see that.
What does that mean, Nettie?
It's because they're chatty.
Okay,
Dolphins are
okay.
chatty. You get to wear a nice outfit and swim with dolphins and all. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be fun. And yeah, I could see that.
I don't know why, but you telling me that you could see me being a dolphin trainer is very validating to me. I also had a moment of wanting to be a cruise director, and I told that to another author, and they were like, oh, I see that. And again, I feel very validated. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes.
You talked about spending a lot of time in your childhood in Nigeria, and the book is so deeply rooted in African culture.
Mhm.
And I have to ask, what was your cooking moment? And if you're chuckling at this, you have to know a question that's coming up soon. Because if
Uh,
what was your cooking moment, Nettie?
so I had to write about it because we're always trying it. Like being Nigerian American, you eat the foods and they're delicious and you love the foods very
Mhm.
much. They are part of your connection to the culture and they're delicious. And they're like different ingredients and everything. So at some point, most of us will try to make the food because we can't be at auntie's house all the time or mom's. And so, yeah, of course I had disasters. I have numerous disasters making goosey soup. Disaster. Disgusting. Oh my God. It was so bad. Making disaster.
What makes it a disaster?
I just can't do it.
But what do you mean? Is it like the wrong ingredient? You overcook it? What could be happening?
You eat these foods, and to me, and I know someone who will listen to this podcast who knows the goosey soup, they'll be like, "Oh, it's so easy to make." It's not. There are so many steps, and then if you mess one thing up, oh my God! And when it's
Okay.
bad, it's not edible. But I think the worst one for me was like there was this fish, this delicious fish that was like it's a dried fish that you crumble it up and you put it in the stew, and it's delicious. And I didn't know how to make this fish, but I came across it at a Nigerian market. And this is here in this country. And I'm like, oh, great. I can make it taste like those things that I love eating. And I get the fish. And as soon as I get it, I bring it home. And it's like this dried fish on a stick. It's curled onto it. And I'm like, I realized I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know. I'm like, what are you doing? So I like crumbled it up and just put it in the stew. It was disgusting and terrible. And then come to find out, I was talking to a friend of mine. He cooks a lot. And he's, oh yeah, that fish, you definitely should have soaked it and make sure that it's clean because sometimes there are worms in it. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? There are worms. And I'm like, oh, what are you? And then I was just like, I'm never doing that again. I'm just not.
This book is far more personal than I realized.
Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so personal in so many details.
Yeah.
So many details.
Yeah. That's I really, like I said, I feel like I got to know you by reading it. So my follow-up question, because in the book you go on to say every Nigerian American has a cooking moment, and they also have a goat experience.
The goat.
So Nnedi, I have to know, what is your goat experience?
It's just,
It's
it's
the same.
exactly that. It's exactly what's it. Like, I was
Okay,
7 and
well then
8.
we don't need to give it away. We could let people
Yeah,
read it in the
okay,
book.
okay, yes, the goat
So we'll
experience.
learn about Nnedi's goat experience by
Yep.
reading it in the book.
It's in there.
I was hoping, reading it, I was like, I wonder if this is hers,
Mhm.
/ I hope this is hers.
It is.
Oh my
It
God.
is. It is.
So funny.
It is.
And like I said, the book is so rooted in culture. And I think something so interesting, there's a line that's like, the way to Nigeria is through the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the idea of the way to Nigeria is through the stomach. You can transport yourself home through food. And it was just a nice reminder of what home is and what home means. And I think that also comes up a lot in the book, metaphorically and theoretically. But I assume, again, making assumptions based on reading the book, that is a way for you to connect with your roots, is through.
Very much. Very much. As a matter of fact, so I'm a pescatarian and I don't eat red meat. But there's only one exception. It's because like most Nigerian dishes involve meat. Like meat is a big deal. And like it's soaked in it and all of that. And I have to be able to eat Nigerian food because there's my connection. And so that's where I relax it when I'm eating that. Yeah.
It is so weird that you just said that, because it is a transition into talking about robots that I wasn't even expecting.
Cool.
Robots are made up of binary code. And there's a quote, humans didn't think in binary.
Yes.
And it is an argument I have all the time, because vegetarianism, pescatarianism, I will often say we are programmed to think in a binary, to live in this binary world. And if there are exceptions to your quote unquote rule that you're placing on yourself, that is okay, because it doesn't have to be binary.
Yeah.
And it is okay for you to be a vegetarian. And when you're really craving bacon, have bacon. That doesn't take away your vegetarianism.
Yeah.
And so exactly what you're describing, you are a pescatarian. And when it is important to you to be eating Nigerian food that happens to have meat in it, it is.
Yeah. To incorporate that way of thinking, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of internal deconstruction. And so I won't judge anyone who can't do it, because that's
yeah. And it's not judgment. It's the being stuck in the binary world.
Yeah.
It's that. And it's so challenging when you think about yes and no and right and wrong and black and white and vegetarian and not vegetarian. Like it is all that in our human world, because we very much do think in a binary.
Yes.
So
and we're used to it. We're used to it. That's what's normal to us. And deconstructing that is like taking something apart that's been there all your life, and it's coming at you in all directions since you've been cognizant. So it's a lot to do. It's a lot. But when you can do it, it's very liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we're so stuck in binary as humans, does that make us robots?
I think so. In
the metaphorical sort of way?
Yeah. There's a lot of that. So those are things that I was thinking about when I was writing this. There's a lot of the robot world, and then our world, and there's a lot of, we're just on this side of this. There's a lot of that going on. And yeah, that is something that I was thinking about, that in a lot of ways, the robots are more liberated than the human beings, and in certain ways that we don't necessarily think about. So yeah, I'm like dancing around, not getting it. It's hard. It's hard. But,
I know.
Yes.
I know it is. So you said Zelu leaves and writes and becomes a writer. Her book is called Rusted Robots, which is not, again, we're not giving anything away. Right. Some robots take pride in their rust.
Yes. Yes.
Do you?
Definitely. Yes. I take pride in my scars and in living and being what I am in the now, and all the things that I collect along the way. Like that whole thing was very, like the personal aspects even go there with the robots as well. That's something that I felt was really, really special with the Rusted Robots. What
does human rust mean to you?
It's living. We're mortal. We're mortal. We're supposed to have the rust. We're supposed to, if you use what you have, and using what you have, it gets rusty. It gets rusty. And that's good. That's good. That's what, that like, I really want to like, I want that idea to really come through for people, is that it's good to have some rust. Like, you've earned it. It's like the rust is earned. That's good. You can't be new forever. You don't want to be new forever.
I had my annual physical yesterday.
Oh.
My doctor was asking me about any
Yeah.
joint pain that
Oh,
was
yeah,
like
joints.
out of the ordinary. And I just started laughing because
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I guess nothing out of the ordinary, but there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this. But that's, I think, a status quo these days.
Yes. Yes. That's, the joints. Whoa, boy.
So
I was
that's
an
like
athlete.
literal rust.
If you don't, you get these things, the aches and pains and all that, that's from using them. So it's, I can definitely talk about the sound of my knees. Wow. Crickety, crackety, crickety, crack, snap, crackle, pop. And I'm an athlete.
But it's interesting. You said it means that you're using them. And I
Yes.
think there's a fine line between using and abusing them.
True.
It's like making sure that you're, I think, using your body, using your skills, using all the things in the right way or in a healthy way. Otherwise, maybe things are getting rusty too early.
Really? Of course, there's always a balance.
Yeah.
But I think we focus a lot on the preventative stuff and making sure we're doing things healthily, but I don't think we focus on enough. I don't think we focus enough on the fact that using something will eventually wear it out.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
That's being a biological being. And that's okay. That's good. That's what you want. When it's all said and done, and you're all said and done, do you want to leave behind? I hear people say, I want to leave behind a beautiful corpse. Really? What does that even mean?
For what?
For what? Yeah, I think, it's the question of balance is important, but I just feel like we don't focus enough on the fact that when you use something, it gets worn out. That's just a normal way of things.
Yeah, it makes me think about books because I get galleys and advanced reader copies. I write in them, I dog ear, I this, I that. I like really use and abuse the books, and it feels like I love them because I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do the same thing to a hardback book because there's something that feels pristine. But to your point, why do I need to leave this beautiful corpse? I could show my books some love.
You should see my books.
Yeah?
My books are dog-eared. They got everything in. And I'll buy the most expensive hardcover, all of that. And it's still going to look like that.
Yeah.
And I love picking up a book that is well-loved. A well-loved book is not a clean book. It is a book with coffee stains on it and dog ears and worn out pages and all of that. That is a book. When I pick up one of those, that one feels like an object.
Yeah.
It's a living object.
I was just going to say it's living. It's had experience. It's made connections.
Yes.
Yeah. What kind of reader are you?
I read wide, like just a lot of different types of books, nonfiction to fiction to memoir. I love memoir. I really love memoir. Yeah. If it's a good story, it's what I'll read it if it's a good story. So I don't have, when people ask, what is your genre? I do not have a genre.
I wasn't asking a genre. I didn't want to pigeonhole you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. But I don't even understand that question. I'm like, what do you mean? So people just only read in the genre. So if there's something over there that's interesting, you're not going to go over there?
Do you mean if you're a vegetarian and there's a really great piece of meat that you want to try?
Yeah.
Right? Like people get stuck in this is what I like. And I say this on, I feel like, every episode, but I only started reading 6 years ago, really reading. And I thought I liked reading one kind of book, and I thought then I liked reading another kind of book. And I do my best to be as open to genres and styles as possible because I try to keep my heart and my imagination open to just appreciate a good story.
Yes.
No matter what the genre is.
Exactly. There's so much to taste out there.
Mhm.
And that's how I feel. If I go into a bookstore or the library, more importantly, I will not look at the category. I'll just go in there and just browse around and see what catches my eye. And that way I found so many different things. And also sometimes I'll just go into the library and just pick something up without even looking at it at all. And then just open it up and start. And I found some very interesting books that way.
Yeah. Is there anything that comes to mind?
The one that, God, what was it? It was Norman Mailer. It was a
Oh,
Norman Mailer book, and it was huge. It was a really big book. Was it Shot in the Heart? It might have been the one that was about the guy who wanted to be executed. Oh man, I think it was. I just can't
okay.
remember the title. Shot in the Heart was another one because I went under. It was like over 1,000 pages, and this was a
Wow.
book. I wasn't even looking. I was just like, okay, let me just pick this up, and then I just started reading it, and then it was over 1,000. It was long. I read this whole thing, and I would never have read it if I didn't just do that.
I can't believe you knowingly saw how thick the book was and pulled
Yeah,
it off the shelf.
I love thick books. I love
Again, tells me a lot about you. That is so funny. I'd be like, what's the thinnest one on the
Well,
shelf?
yeah, thin ones have their charm too. I write novellas. I get it. I get
I
it.
will say, honestly, there are some short books that I have a very hard time getting into because you don't have time to sit in
Yeah.
the narrative. You don't
Yeah.
have time to really appreciate the world that we're living in.
Yeah, it's a different experience,
Yeah.
which I like. I
Oh,
like all the
absolutely. There
different,
is the time and the place. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I typed up about how the gap between human and robot is closing in
Yes.
my notes. And the note auto-corrected to cloning instead of
Perfect.
closing. And I was
Swear,
like,
autocorrect is sentient. I swear. And it's evil.
right?
It knows what it's doing.
I was like, that is horrifying. Earlier, you were talking about time and a place, and not just time and a place of reading a book, but time and a place of a book coming out. We're living in this moment of AI right now. Obviously, I'm sure that's going to be a huge part of conversation when you're on book tour.
Yeah.
How can we submit to the technology in a productive way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because it's not going anywhere. It is
Mm-mm.
not going away. It's not going away. I think that we need to just keep creating.
Mm.
We need to just keep being who we are and putting we need to just keep creating. We shouldn't be afraid of the technology. I am not for using it in a creative capacity. I just can't understand why anyone would do that. I don't, as a creative, I don't like the heart of creating is the human aspect of it. Like using AI to even help with that, you're losing something. You're losing
Mhm.
you may think it's much easier and faster, but it's not about easy and it's not about fast. For me as a creative, it is about neither of those. It needs to be tough. It needs to be felt. It needs to be experienced. The idea of experience, and this is something that's definitely in the book, the importance of experience cannot be replicated. So there's that. I think that not having a fear of it. Don't be afraid of it. It's okay to study it, look at it, check it out, see what it's about. The way that the technology was created is a problem. It's definitely something that's created through capitalism, and that is a fact. And so it's taking from this idea of it taking from artists and then using those things to learn is that system. And I'm really saddened that was how the technology was created. So we know the problems with it, but I think as creatives but as people as well, don't be afraid of it. Let it be there. If they want to have AI written books, let them be there. But keep being who you are. Keep being human. Keep exploring what it is to be human. And I think I do think we'll be okay. I'm an optimist, but I'm also an irrational optimist. So there's that. But I think it's going to be really interesting how everything develops.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I've said again multiple times, I am an optimist, realist rising.
Okay. What does that mean exactly?
To me, it means I'm optimistic when I try to think glass half full, but I also know that glass could spill.
Yes. And break.
So I am optimistic, but there are real things that can happen.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah. That's how I live my life, I guess. Okay, speaking of living your life, we have a little bit of time left, and you were getting emotional at the beginning, and I said we can't get emotional yet, and I'm really sorry, but this might be the time where we get a little bit
Okay.
emotional. I don't mean to get you emotional, but I do have to say thank you for sharing your sister with us. I feel like I know so much about her spirit. I feel like I know her favorite color. I feel like I know a general vibe. And I think knowing how personal this book is to you, to then read some very specific lines, I was like, oh, not only is it so personal, we're getting Nnedi's journal in here.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to thank you for sharing that. You have a beautiful letter at the beginning of The Galley. Do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about how the book came to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote it, so I have to, it's hard. So this was a book that I wanted to really write from the beginning. I wanted to write. Because one of the things for me when I first started telling stories was like writing the Nigerian American experience. Because I just feel like I wasn't reading it anywhere, and it was a lot of confusion, a lot of joy, a lot of really good story in there. And I wanted to talk about that, and also my sisters, because we're just so I have two older sisters, one who's 1 year older and then one who's 2 years older. So it's three of us, and we're all 1 year apart. Very close. Very close. I have my younger brother as well. We're close with my younger brother as well, but it was really the three of us. And so we would talk about just this story about the three of us and what it is to be Nigerian American. And we were always talking about it and just something. So the stories that I started telling veered towards the science fictional and the fantastic. I felt more comfortable there. I was pulled back. I just wasn't ready to write that type of story that's just so open and naked.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2021, my middle sister passed, and it was sudden. It was unexpected. And this is like my everything, we were at Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when that happened, one thing that I tend to do when I write, and it started with how I started writing, is I write when I'm in pain. And it's not because I'm trying to do it, it's that it's the only way I can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this one, it was just her passing. Like my father passed, and that was bad in a different way, but that's why I wrote Who Fears Death. But my sister, this was bad. This was like a part of me, like not just a part of me, it's like me suddenly not there. It's just, oh my God. And so like the only way that I could even keep going was I was just like, okay, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing Death of the Author literally 2 days after it happened. It was like, it was time. And it was time. I was ready, but also it was the only way that I could keep going because it just didn't make sense. I couldn't make sense of anything. I couldn't make sense of anything. And so out came this story. And it was like, it's so much because Death of the Author isn't only about my sister, but there are aspects of you've read it. So she's very much in there. And even in the early draft, she was even more in there. It was the earliest draft of this. One of my editors read it and she was like, you need to go back and do an edit because reading this was so painful. That it was so extremely painful and sad that like it was coming off, it was like just wafting off of the page. So that's what this started as. So like even with the title, it's just the title makes sense to me when I look at the title. The feeling, that jarring feeling makes sense. So like this one is different from my other books, and even the fact that it's being published and that it's out, oh man, it feels great, but it feels something else as well. This book was a lot.
Yeah.
This book was a lot. And the fact that I can even talk about it, it's just hard. But I'm glad that I've written this. I'm glad that I have, because there's something cathartic about it as well. And I did this, it's like I kept saying my sister, her name is Ngozi,
Mm-hmm.
over and over again in the story, and it echoes, and yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I have 2 younger sisters myself, and we're very close, and they mean so much to me. And I'm sure it is not as hard of a book to read as it might have been,
Yeah.
but knowing where the book came from only made it an even more rich experience. And I feel like I got to know you in such a personal way. And I feel like I got to know your sister in such a personal way. And it felt like it was a dash of memoir with some robot science fiction in there. And I just wanted to share all of that with you, that it meant a lot to me as a person with siblings as well.
Well, it's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for connecting with it. And I'm glad. That's why we writers write.
There was one line in particular that I won't say, but when I reached the ending, it all made sense to me in a way that surprised me.
Good.
I questioned why a character said something earlier in the
Yes.
book.
Okay.
And by the end of the book,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this all makes sense.
Yes.
It is such a special book. I'm so excited for people to read it. It's such a it's a terrible question to ask creatives, because this is barely out in the world, and to say, is there anything else that you're working on that we can get excited about? But I have to imagine you finished this and you were like, I have to do something different to change things up for you emotionally. What were you doing? This was obviously such an emotional and cathartic experience for you. What did you then do to release yourself of that?
Yeah, it's been crazy, because there was something about writing this book that has just given me this. I'm already very prolific. That's already known. It's not a flex. It's just Nnedi. I write. I have a lot of stories to tell, and I do them. I was an athlete, so yeah. But honestly, there's something about this book and writing this book and the exercise and of writing it that has opened something up in me. So I've been so creative. It's like I have so many stories. It's crazy. I wrote, so I had my novella She Who Knows, which came out in August, and it's the beginning of a trilogy. I wrote that novella in the middle, like at the 3/4 mark of when I was writing Death of the Author, which I've never done. I don't do long form. Like, I do one long form thing at a time. And this story came to me, and it's been a story that had been in my head for a while, and it came at the worst time. It was like, you need to write this now. So I literally stopped and wrote a novella in between, and then kept going with Death of the Author. And then I've written the second and the third already. Like, it's just, and I have so many stories. I have all these stories from in the world of Death of the Author that keep exploding from my head. I have 2 short stories. And then it's so much.
Yeah.
It's
See,
so
this
much.
is why I asked, because I had a feeling there was a real answer.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you just sit in this.
No, I could not. I could not want something like that. And then that's not the way I operate, first of all. I'm always going. And this one was just like, it was just like this infusion of energy, even though it took a lot of it. When I was editing Death of the Author last year, I developed an eye twitch that lasted a year. It lasted a year because the editing it was so emotional and just taxing to me that my eyes started twitching. I went to the eye doctors. They're like, it's stress and it's eye strain. It will eventually get better. It lasted a year. So it was like I was operating on this super high level. And then for some reason, the way that it happened for me was that operating at this high level has made me even more creative. It's like I've gone to another level where I'm just very productive right now.
I can't wait to read your book where the character has an eye twitch for a year.
Yeah, it's one of my short stories. I just sold it yesterday.
Oh my God, congrats. Of course it is. Of course it is. That's so funny. Okay, before we go, there's something cultural in the book that I find so moving and beautiful. Can you tell me and the listeners from your perspective what a masquerade is?
Masquerades. Yes. Masquerades and I highly encourage all of you to Google this, because you have to, it's for me to describe what they look like is not enough. Google Ijele is a masquerade. Ijele is a masquerade. There are all kinds of masquerades. You might have seen them, see them on social media a lot. They are basically manifestations of the dead and spirits. And they come out at very important times. And like on a very practical level, fine, on a literal level, it's someone who puts on this costume. But when you put on this costume, you become the masquerade.
Mhm.
And there are many different types of masquerades. I'm obsessed with them. My sisters and I were chased by masquerades when we were little in the village all the time. And we were lucky we were fast, okay? Because they had a whip and whip you if you got it. Was just, oh my God, so great. It sounds crazy, but whatever. It's fine. It was great.
Well, there are a
Yeah.
couple in the book, and there was
Yes.
one that brought me to tears, and it was so special.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for sharing all
Yeah.
of that with us.
Yeah.
Nnedi, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. This has been great.
Everyone go get Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. It is such a special book, and we're all lucky that it's coming out in January so that we have the whole year to relish in it.
Yes, I cannot wait for everyone to read it and talk about it, and because it's something else.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot.
Yes. I have to hit record before I tell you how fabulous you look.
Oh, thank you so
I'm
much.
so angry at this.
Why?
You're like in all of your drag glory, and it is not even 9 o'clock in the morning for me, and I look like I'm
You
in
look
my
beautiful.
sweats, basically.
Oh, this is
Hi.
just a spot of lippy and a pair of specs.
Holly Stars, I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to Gaze
Thank you.
Reading.
I'm excited to be here.
I want to talk so much about your book, but before we do that, because you are today's fabulous guest gay reader, I have to know, Holly Stars, what are you reading?
What am I reading? And now this is very British, I think, what I'm going to show you now. I don't know if you'll know it. It's Take a Break magazine. And it is the best magazine. And if you're like in hospital because you've choked on a peanut or something and your friends don't come with a copy of this, they've made a big mistake. It's that kind of a magazine that everyone, when they're relaxing, has a read of Take a Break.
Okay, before we get into what is in Take a Break, because I'm so curious, who is that on the cover? Do we have her? Do we have her contact information? Is she okay?
No, she's just this week's model, but they put a different generic model on the front of every week. But she's got nothing to do with the content inside.
The way you slowly pulled up the second one, she looks dead in the eyes. Is she okay? Are they both okay? Are they AI generated? What is
I think
happening?
maybe they've read too much Take a Break magazine and it's
they need
to
take a break.
Yeah, but I love Take a Break magazine.
Is there like a section that you always flip to?
It's a combination of like lifestyle, puzzles, and true life stories. That's range in the degree of seriousness of these stories. Sometimes it's like my brother murdered my uncle, and then other times, in this week's edition, there's a story called Happy Nudiversary, a pair of nudists celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary, and the story of how they became the poster child for nudism in the 80s. So it's a very varied magazine content-wise, and that's why it's so fun to read.
How do we know how they met? I have so many questions about them.
It didn't say how they...
Can we put your book aside for a minute? Will you just read that out loud to me, the whole article this whole time? I'm teasing. You don't have to. I'm just suddenly.
I don't know how they met, but it did say they met when she was 60 years of being nudists. They met when she was 20, and after the wedding, he told her that he was a nudist and that she could join him in this nudism. And now they're in their 80s and full-time nudists. They're gardening, they do everything in the nud.
Could you do that?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Could I do it? No. No. I don't think I would like it.
No.
I don't think I would like a public nudity.
Your line of work is adding more things onto you.
More things. Yeah.
Not taking away.
No.
I know. I think that's
if I'm
me
not
too.
wearing 3 pairs of dance tights, I'm not comfortable.
I know. Okay. Well, that's,
that's
good for them. Very happy for them.
Yeah.
If they're
me
listening to
too.
this episode of Gaze Reading,
Oh, I hope they are. We celebrate
Mort,
them here.
is it like Morty and Diane?
No, I did.
I've
Hold
decided
on.
that's what their names are.
I'm sure I did a little screen grab of that one because sometimes I get the paper copy, but otherwise I have a subscription on my iPad. And for when I'm out and about for easy access to take a break.
Yes, of course.
Here they are. Here they are. There they are. Happy new anniversary
Oh my God.
from when they met to modern day. It's
I'm
lovely.
very invested in this, Holly. This is...
You need to get on it. Take a Break magazine. It is a British
Gonna write it
staple
down.
since 1990.
I'm curious because we all read magazines differently. I'm always the person who... There was one magazine, I can't remember if it was when I was living in New York or in Chicago, and in the back it was like sex advice. And that was always the first place I went. I was like, what are people asking? I have to know. And then everything else came next. But are you a games person? Are you a gossip person? Tell me more.
Yeah, I'll do some of the games because sometimes there's cash prizes, but I don't enter for the cash prizes very often. But I do the games, the crosswords and that kind of thing. And then I also enjoy reading the horoscopes. Don't believe one single jot in horoscopes, but I'll have a little nosy. And then there's a section called Dear Doctor, where you can write. I don't know why people don't go to a real doctor, but instead they write into Take a Break magazine with their medical problems, and the doctor answers them in the magazine.
You should write and say, Dear Doctor, what are your qualifications?
Are you a real doctor?
Are you a real doctor?
I think she is a real doctor, but people write in with things like, I think my son might be allergic to pineapple because every time he eats it, this was in this week's, every time he eats it, his lips swell up. And I'm like, don't give him any more pineapple. Take him to an allergy doctor. Write him to Take a Break and wait for 6 weeks for the thing to come out.
That's
But I
worse
love
than
it.
Googling, because Googling, it at least pops up immediately.
Yes. But no, people write into Take a Break magazine instead. It's very interesting. I love seeing what people send in.
Holly, I have to tell you, this is why I don't only ask about books, because this has opened a whole new world for me.
It's iconic, and we have a few variations of Take a Break's the main one, like the classic posh one that you can get of this type of magazine. But there's also one called Chat and one called That's Life. But those ones are often a bit more murdery. And I'm not so interested in the true life murder stories.
Oh, like real life.
I prefer a lifestyle story.
Yes. There should be like take a short break, and that's the one that you bring to the toilet.
Yes.
Like a mini.
You need to write in.
I know. Could you imagine?
I'd suggest that.
Dear Take a Break, I'm an American and I've just heard about you, but I have an idea.
I have an idea. It's going to change the industry.
Okay. I love what you're reading. I love this. But what was I just reading? Murder in the Dressing Room.
Yeah.
This was sitting on our coffee table, and my husband turned to me and he said, I've been watching too much Drag Race because that looks like a drag queen to me. And I said, that is a drag queen, and that's exactly what you should think.
Good. That's what we want.
For our listeners, please tell us, what is your log line for Murder in the Dressing Room?
Yes, Murder in the Dressing Room. Misty Devine is an up-and-coming star of the London drag scene, and her drag mother is murdered backstage with a poisoned chocolate. When the police don't seem interested, Misty decides that she will turn detective herself to catch the killer. So that's the premise, and it's the sort of journey through a kind of fictionalized London drag scene where Misty goes from place to place talking to kings and queens to find out who might have done it.
This is not your first dip into the murder mystery genre.
No.
This has become what you, I feel like, are known for these days.
Maybe so, yeah.
Because I was very familiar with Death Drop, the play happening in the UK. I was obsessed with the artwork, and I was obsessed with seeing the pictures coming out, and obsessed with seeing what queens were coming into the show. So you were very much on my radar. So then to see you coming out with this book, I was like, oh, this Holly stars. She's like a little modern Arthur Conan Doyle. How did that come to be?
Even before I started performing, well before I started performing 20 years ago, I started writing my first crime novel, and that was always what I wanted to do, was to write crime fiction. And then I started performing and channeled my writing efforts into writing stories about my evil neighbor, Posh Sue, and all the terrible things that she's done to me. And so stand-up comedy is storytelling about the terrible neighbors on my street. And that's where I channeled everything. And I'd been doing...
And then you started imagining murdering them.
Yeah, I'd been doing that for a few years before I was asked to write Death Drop. And so I said, yes, definitely, that sounds lovely. And once I'd written Death Drop and it was running on the West End and it was going really well, I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can pick up some of that crime fiction stuff I was doing before and see if there's a way to carry it through. And I messaged a literary agent and said, would you like to come and see Death Drop? We got talking and Murder in the Dressing Room was born. Yeah, so one thing led to another, but I'd always been interested in writing crime fiction. It just was fun. It's what I enjoyed reading.
It is not an uncommon story that people are on a path to do one thing and then next thing they know, they fall into drag in some way. And I suddenly, you saying this, I'm just imagining, what if everybody who wanted to go on one path, then became a drag queen, then circles back to do that first thing, but as a drag queen? Someone wanted to be a doctor, but then they became a drag queen. Now I want to see them as the drag doctor.
The drag doctor. Hey, that'd be a proper good American reality television program, wouldn't it? Botched or something. You imagine. It would be so good, the drag doctor.
Yes.
Just be tons of filler and Botox.
I heard that you listen to the same song over and over again. What was your Murder in the Dressing Room song?
For a big chunk of it, it was A Case of You by Joni Mitchell. I was listening to the version of it from the Practical Magic soundtrack, and when my Spotify Wrapped thing came in, it said that I was in the 0.001% of listeners of the Practical Magic soundtrack last year.
Oh my
So
God,
I felt quite proud of myself. I felt like writing to Sandra Bullock to let her know that I was still listening all these years later.
You should take a screenshot and tag all the Practical Magic people in it on Instagram. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd usually bore out of a song after about 2 or 3 months, and then I have to find a replacement that's not going to be too distracting to write to. So actually recently it has been the Ballad of the Witch's Road from Agatha All Along, and that has been that'll be top of my Spotify Wrapped next year. This year.
So this is one of 3 Misty Divine Mysteries coming up. Is there anything, obviously this book is coming out into the world now, are there particular things that you're excited for people to look forward to for future books?
There is some big hints, especially in the epilogue, about what might be coming next for Misty. And so I think people will get to the end of book 1 and have a sort of hint or an idea of what book 2 might be about.
Yeah.
And the same with book 2 leading into book 3, there'll be a sort of hint of what's coming next. So yeah, hopefully if people have enjoyed it, they'll get to that bit and think, oh, I can't wait for the next one. That's what would be lovely.
Are you putting yourself in her shoes in the book because this is something that you perhaps would love to do in real life? Could you ever solve crime?
Oh, I think it'd be quite fun to try, but I don't know if the reality of it is very much investigating the poisoning of a drag queen with a chocolate. It's not the type of crime that I'm writing about, is likely not being investigated very often.
That's probably fair. I guess maybe my real question is like, do you have those sort of natural instincts? Do you like walk into a room and see, oh, that's out of place. Oh, that wasn't there before. oh, that smell is something from that person who I know what their cologne was because I gave them a hug 3 days ago at the bar. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely one of them. I'm quite observational, and also I enjoy trying to solve a mystery, watching them on telly, and I'm usually quite good at that. So yeah, maybe I'd be all right at it. And actually, when I was first writing Murder in the Dressing Room, and it's still on my bio on some websites, I don't know how it's still being released because I was like, take that out when I didn't have time to do it anymore. I was training to be a private detective, and I did the first 2 modules of some course so I hadn't got very into the actual investigative bits, but it was about the ethics and the sort of practicalities in those first 2 modules. And then I ended up so busy with other stuff that I just couldn't carry it on and finish it. But I did for a while think, oh, this would be a fun thing to learn and that'd help me with the writing and everything. So yeah, so I gave it a go, and maybe I'll pick it back up again at some point. I don't have time now, but yeah, at some point perhaps I will.
So really what I'm hearing is that my instinct was right.
I was doing it more for the writing than for me personally.
Next thing, you're going to solve a murder mystery.
Next thing you know,
that's all.
I'm going to be hiding outside cheap hotels looking for cheaters. And I'm going to love it.
Holding your take a break like this.
Yes.
Okay, since this is, again, Gaze Reading, this is a safe space, do you have any grievances that you want to air? Are you reading anything with a capital R, capital E, capital
Winter.
A?
Winter.
I know.
Because we're now on our 12th consecutive month of winter in the United Kingdom, and it's exhausting.
Do your lashes freeze?
My lashes freeze. My eyebrows freeze. That might be Botox. But it's frozen from head to toe. So I've had enough of winter. That's what I would read if I could read anything right now.
I know. You could do like a winter mystery, a winter murder mystery.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I will. Second one, summer. First one, second time, and second one's summertime also. So maybe winter's a bit bleak for a murder mystery.
A little on the nose, the blood and the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it could be really camp at the same time, couldn't it? Someone disguised as Santa killing people or something. Yeah, that's horrible, isn't it?
But murder's horrible. Or Mrs. Claus, dressed as Mrs. Claus.
Mrs. Claus. See, now we're talking. We would do like a festive Misty Divine special.
Yes.
Claus.
She orders her Mrs. Claus suit from the toilet, reading her Take a Short Break magazine.
This is the whole thing. The whole thing that I was not expecting, but I'm loving it.
Oh my God. Holly Stars, you're going to get off and be like, who was that guy? Why was I on that show?
Yeah, I'm loving
Who does he
this
think
one.
he is?
This is a treat.
Holly Stars, this has been so lovely.
So lovely. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really loved it.
Thank you for being here. Murder in the Dressing Room is out now.
Out now.
Everyone go check it out. It is delightfully fun and camp. Go enjoy your puzzles.
Thank you.
I'm going to encourage you to send something in to try to win the money.
Yes, I need to do that.
Thank you, Nnedi. Thank you, Holly, so much, both of you, for being here. Follow Gaze Reading wherever you get your podcast. Links to all of the things are in the show notes. Make sure to check out aardvarkbookclub.com. Use the code Gaze Reading at checkout to get your first book for $4. See you all next week. Thanks so much. Bye.